She screamed so loud the birds scattered from the pine trees. "That's my son's inheritance. You can't touch that house." I froze halfway up the cabin steps, paintbrush dripping white over the old wooden rail. I'd been working since sunrise, breathing in the smell of cedar and dust, when this woman, tight bun, expensive sunglasses, and that voice came storming across my newly cleared yard like she owned the mountain. "I'm sorry." "Ma'am," I said, setting the brush down. "Who exactly are you?" She crossed her arms. "I'm Karen Wilson. My family owned this property for generations. That cabin belongs to my son. Your so-called purchase is a mistake, and I'll be calling the HOA immediately." I almost laughed. "Ma'am, this cabin was abandoned for decades. The deed's in my name." Her lips tightened. "Not for long." That's when I noticed the white SUV idling on the road, two men in polos watching from inside. Karen pointed at them like she was giving an order. "They're with the Historic Preservation Committee. They'll make sure you stop destroying our heritage." My jaw clenched. Our heritage? I'd spent 6 months fighting for the right to restore this 150-year-old home, my great-grandfather's original cabin, after it got tangled in some HOA paperwork scam. The county records were crystal clear, but she didn't want truth. She wanted control. One of the men stepped out. "Sir, this is a restricted structure," he said, flashing what looked like an ID badge. "You're under notice for unauthorized restoration." I could feel the anger rising, but I kept calm. "That's interesting," I said quietly, "because I happen to be the architect of record for this rebuild. And I know fake badges when I see them." Karen's face twisted. "Excuse me." I walked closer, eyes on the man's laminated card. Didn't even have a county seal. Just some printed words under plastic. "You mind if I take a picture of that?" He hesitated. "That's not necessary." "Oh, I think it is," Karen snapped. "Stop being difficult. We can settle this easily. Just hand over the keys. My family will reimburse you." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're trying to buy me off?" "No," she said, smirking. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away before this gets ugly." The wind picked up, rattling the cabin shutters. For a moment, I remembered the first time I'd seen this place. Roof caved in, vines through the windows, sunlight slicing through the cracks. I'd made a promise that day. I'd bring it back to life. This wasn't just a project. It was legacy. I looked back at her. "You don't get to decide what's ugly, Karen." She glared. "You'll regret saying that." Then, with a dramatic wave of her phone, she started recording. "Everyone online will see how this man destroyed my family's land. My son grew up here. This was his playground. Your son wasn't even born when this place was condemned," I muttered. She ignored me. "You're a trespasser. You stole our history." That was when I noticed something strange. Her committee members had quietly slipped back into the SUV and driven off, leaving her yelling into the mountain air like an actress without a stage. I turned toward the cabin, hoping she'd leave. Instead, she followed me right to the porch and kicked the half-painted door. "You'll pay for this," she shouted. "The HOA doesn't take kindly to thieves." I took a slow breath. "Karen, there is no HOA out here. You're 2 miles outside their district." She blinked, thrown off. "That's not possible. This whole valley—" "No," I said. "Just your street." Her mouth opened, then closed again. And for the first time, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Panic. Before she could respond, a phone rang inside her purse. She stepped aside to answer it, voice trembling. "What do you mean, the county records? No, that can't be right." My father said. I didn't hear the rest. But I saw her face go pale. Whatever lies she'd been told. It was starting to crack. Still, I knew better than to relax. People like Karen didn't stop. They just changed tactics. And sure enough, as she walked back to her car, she tossed one last line over her shoulder. "You might have won this round. But tomorrow, you'll wish you never touched this house." I stood on that porch watching her drive away, wondering what she meant, because in a town like ours, threats didn't come alone. If someone claimed your house belonged to their family, how far would you go to prove them wrong? Would you fight back or walk away? The next morning, I woke up to the sound of engines. More than one. When I stepped outside, 3 pickup trucks were parked by the old dirt road. Men in orange vests were setting up signs. HOA Work Zone, private property. I rubbed my eyes. Private property? This was my land. Karen stood there in a bright red coat, holding a clipboard like she'd just taken over the county. "You were warned," she said calmly. "You can't stop progress." "Progress?" I asked. "You brought construction crews?" "Preservation crews," she corrected with that smug grin. "We're taking this cabin under HOA protection. You'll be compensated later if you cooperate." I almost laughed. "Karen, that's not how the law works." She tilted her head. "Funny. I heard you're behind on your permit fees." That hit me. "Who told you that?" She smiled wider. "Public records. You'd be amazed what I can access when I make a few calls." I pulled out my phone and checked the county site right there. Sure enough, my building permit status had changed overnight, from approved to pending investigation. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. "You hacked the system?" Karen shrugged. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I simply know people who care about our community, and they don't like strangers digging up old graves." That last word chilled me. "What graves?" She pointed at the backyard. "That hill behind your house. My great-grandfather is buried there. You've been driving nails above his bones." I almost dropped my phone. "That's impossible. The survey showed nothing," she smirked. "Then maybe your survey's as fake as your ownership." Her workers started walking toward the cabin with equipment. I stepped in front of them. "You set one foot on my porch and I'll call the sheriff." Karen didn't flinch. "Oh, please do." She pulled out her phone and dialed before I could. "Yes, officer." "This is Mrs. Wilson. I need immediate assistance. There's a man illegally occupying my family's historic home." She ended the call and gave me a satisfied smile. "They're on their way." Minutes later, a black SUV rolled up. Two men in uniform got out, badges glinting in the sun. But something was off again. Their badges didn't look right. One said Community Enforcement Division. The county didn't have such a department. Karen folded her arms proudly. "Arrest him." "He's trespassing." The taller man looked at me. "Name?" "Ethan Carter," I said firmly. "Owner of this property." I handed him the deed copy I always kept in my pocket. "You might want to verify before you do anything stupid." He glanced at it, then at Karen. "Ma'am, this shows," Karen snapped. "That's forged." He printed that himself. My patience broke. "All right," I said, stepping closer. "If you're real officers, call the county dispatch and confirm my ownership. Go ahead." "I'll wait." The shorter man hesitated, pulled out his radio, and that's when I saw it. The radio wasn't connected. The antenna was missing. I smiled slowly. "Fake cops again?" "You didn't learn the first time?" Karen's eyes widened. "Don't you accuse them." But the men were already backing away. "Ma'am, we're done here," one muttered before they sped off down the road. Karen's face turned red. You set me up." I pointed toward the cabin cameras mounted under the roof. "No, Karen, you just exposed yourself. Again." She looked up at the blinking red light and went silent. For a long moment she didn't speak, then turned and stormed toward her car. But before leaving, she shouted one last thing. "You think you've won? You don't even know who I'm related to." The echo of her words hung in the air long after her car disappeared down the hill. And for the first time, I started to wonder, what if she wasn't bluffing this time? If someone kept sending fake officers to your land, would you confront them? Or build proof quietly and strike later? What would you do? That night I couldn't sleep. The cabin creaked softly in the mountain wind, like it was remembering every storm it had survived. I sat by the old fireplace with my laptop, scrolling through county records again and again. Nothing about Karen Wilson owning this land. Nothing about graves. Nothing about a historic committee. But then I noticed something odd. A new document had been added just hours ago. A petition to place my property under temporary HOA heritage control. Signed by someone named Richard Wilson, county inspector. My gut tightened. Wilson, Karen's last name. I opened another tab and searched his name. Within minutes I found him. Deputy County Inspector, Land and Heritage Division, appointed 3 years ago. Karen's husband. So that's how she'd been pulling the strings. The next morning I drove straight to the county office. The clerk behind the counter looked up nervously as I dropped the printed petition in front of her. "Can you tell me who approved this?" She frowned. "Sir, this document hasn't even been processed yet." "How did you—" "Because it's being forged right under your roof," I said, keeping my voice calm. She looked at me like she wanted to help but couldn't. Mr. Carter, you didn't hear it from me, but Inspector Wilson's been making changes to property databases after hours. He says it's for preservation corrections. That was all I needed to hear. When I got back to the cabin, Karen was already there, standing beside a white county truck this time. And sure enough, her husband, Richard, was with her, clipboard in hand, official badge shining. He looked me over like I was some trespasser. Mr. Carter, we've received reports of illegal restoration and unauthorized use of restricted heritage land. I folded my arms. You mean the land you tried to steal using your wife's signature? Karen gasped like she was the victim. How dare you accuse us? My great-grandfather wasn't buried here, I cut her off. I checked the records. His grave's 2 towns over. Her husband's eyes flickered, but his tone stayed cold. You'll leave now, or we'll have this place condemned. I stepped forward, calm but firm. You go ahead and do that, 'cause I've got every one of your fake officers on video. And before I left this morning, I sent those recordings and your forged petition to the county attorney's office. Karen's mouth dropped. You didn't, I did. And by now they're verifying every signature you forged, Richard. For a second, silence filled the air. Then Richard's mask cracked. His jaw clenched, his voice dropped low. You think you can ruin me over some rotten cabin? I looked him in the eye. This cabin belonged to my great-grandfather, the same man your ancestors forced off this land a century ago. So yeah, I'm not letting you rewrite history again. Karen's hand trembled as she gripped her husband's arm. Let's go, Richard. He's bluffing, but he didn't move. He stared at me for a long, heavy moment. Then without another word, he got in the truck and drove off. Tires spraying gravel. Karen stayed behind just long enough to whisper, You're making a mistake crossing us. Then she was gone too. I exhaled slowly. The fight wasn't over, but now I knew who the enemy really was. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered, and a calm voice said, Mr. Carter, this is Attorney Miller from the county office. We received your footage. You were right about everything. Relief flooded through me. But before I could thank her, she added, One more thing. You might want to stay somewhere else tonight. The Wilsons are under investigation, and people like that don't go down quietly. I stared out at the cabin windows, the forest growing dark behind them. For the first time, I felt something colder than anger. I felt hunted. If you discovered your enemy had power inside the system, would you fight them openly or gather proof quietly first? What's smarter when truth itself is under attack? That night, the mountain went silent, not the normal peaceful kind. It felt like the world was holding its breath. I locked the cabin door and kept the lights low. Every crack of wood made my pulse jump. Around midnight, I heard tires crunching on the gravel road. Headlights flashed through the trees, stopping right at my gate. A second later, someone started banging on the door. Ethan Carter. Open up, county inspection. But the voice wasn't official. It was angry, desperate. I checked the cameras on my phone. Karen and her husband, both in dark jackets, standing on my porch. Richard was carrying something metallic. It took me a second to realize what it was. A crowbar. I turned on the porch light and opened the door halfway. You sure you want to do this, Richard? Karen's voice cracked. You ruined our family. He lost his job because of you. I held up my phone, showing the red recording icon. You did that yourselves. Richard stepped closer, face twisted with rage. Turn that off before he could finish, a second pair of headlights appeared down the road. A sheriff's car rolled in, sirens off but lights flashing. Karen's eyes widened. You called them? I shook my head. Didn't have to. 2 deputies stepped out, flashlights ready. One of them called out, Mr. Carter, are you all right? I nodded. Perfect timing. Richard froze as the sheriff approached him. Sir, please put down the crowbar. Karen started crying. He's lying. He forged everything. The sheriff held up a folder. Actually, ma'am, we just came from the county attorney's office. We've got verified footage, altered database logs, and your husband's access records. You both need to come with us. Karen's tears stopped instantly. No, this isn't happening. Richard dropped the crowbar, shoulders slumping. She said the land was ours. I just wanted to protect what's left of our name. The sheriff sighed. And now you're both charged with forgery, impersonation of officers, and attempted property fraud. As they were led away, Karen turned back one last time. "You'll regret this. You can rebuild that house, but you can't erase the past." I looked at her calm. "You're right. But I can make sure history tells the truth this time." When the cars drove off, I stood there under the porch light. The night finally quiet again. The mountain air felt different, cleaner somehow. Over the next weeks, the county restored my permits, cleared every false claim, and even offered protection while the investigation continued. News channels picked up the story. Local couple impersonates officials in HOA property scam. But I didn't smile until the day I finished restoring the cabin. I nailed the last plank into the front porch and stood back, watching the morning sun hit the wood just right. Inside, the fireplace burned steady, the same one my great-grandfather had built with his own hands. For the first time in decades, the place felt alive again. My neighbor, an old veteran named Bill, stopped by. "Heard what you did," he said. "Most folks would have sold the place and walked away." I smiled. "Some things are worth standing for." He nodded slowly. "You remind me why we fought for this country, so no one could take what's rightfully ours." I looked out across the valley. The same land my family once lost, now free again. And as the wind moved through the pines, I said quietly, "Guess the real inheritance isn't property. It's pride. Do you believe some battles are worth fighting even when the odds are against you? Would you defend your family's legacy? Or walk away in peace,